Today, we do our very first live mock draft in preparation for our listener league. We will discuss our favorite picks in each round, as well as who we are avoiding at cost in order to set up lasting dynasties. I'm your host, Justin, joined as always by my co hosts, David and JP. We are excited to be live drafting here with several members of our league, actually. They're in slots that they're not drafting out of, trying to confuse us a little bit, see how we react. We want to give them a little bit of heads up, make it challenging on ourselves. We're very excited for our first listener league. We also, of course, acknowledge, mock drafts are fun. We don't do a lot of them here on the pod because we do like to try to focus a little bit more on the theory side of things. Mock drafts never go quite like real drafts do. We hope getting so many live people in, as we only have 3 computers involved, will help us out a little bit in getting a little bit more of a real situation. We have David drafting out of the 2 spot, his spot in our draft. JP drafting out of the 5 spot. Too scared to give me any insight onto what he's going to do out of the 11 spot in the real draft. That's fine. And me drafting out of the 12 spot, my spot in the draft. We do have a 3-round reversal. This is Superflex 1.75 tight end premium, start 11, no additional scoring changes, no tiered PPR, points per carry, anything like that. So with all that being said, we're going to start the draft in about 20 seconds. David, who are you hoping to get at the 102 here?
Well, yeah, like I said in the chat, Tim Tebow's really the only NFL player name that I know. No, I'm just kidding. It's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in that order. I'll take whichever one is there. And if you just a note, if you see me looking this way, that's where my draft board is. So that's going to happen a lot.
I'm just here tagging J Mama on the clock. J Mamana. He's one of our
if he misses, just know that if he would have taken Allen, I would take Mahomes. I'm not trying to hide anything here.
And he takes Mahomes. So I wonder who David's taking. Not Tim Tebow. I am shocked. JP on the clock at 5. What are you thinking here? We saw Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, and Jalen Hurts go off.
Yeah, those bots go immediately. It's kind of jarring, but it's nice that it's going quickly. I'm going to stick with quarterback here. Lamar Jackson, he's the top of my board at quarterback. So I'm going to stick and select him here.
I think that's a fair pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's just done it for so long. And I think he's an underrated passer, too. I think even if he does, in a few years start to decline in athleticism, I think he's actually a better passer than Hurts, in my opinion.
Jay Mamana popping in the chat saying he would have taken Mahomes. So it looked like it worked out that way.
We see some wide receivers going. These are one of our league mates taking Justin Jefferson, another league mate of mine in a different league taking Jamar Chase at the 107. At the 108, we will see Champa Bay 8. I don't remember if it was him or Disco Spider also drafting with us. One of them does have a baby down for a nap. So if that baby wakes up, he might start auto drafting. But instead, he took CeeDee Lamb. So 3 wide receivers going in the middle of the first. Were you guys expecting to see that?
I was just about to bring that up. I think there's still a couple quarterbacks I'd have taken before the receivers. I'm not surprised to see 1 or 2 of them go, but all 3 is a little bit surprising. And then Amon-Ra at, what was that, 10? That's a little surprising. Caleb before Richardson, also a little surprising.
In the community, I see Caleb and Richardson flip sometimes. I mean, I like Richardson a little bit more, but I'm surprised at Burrow. I just think that he probably should have gone above 1 or 2 of the receivers, but I don't hate it because those receivers are elite, great.
Also interesting that Lamb was the 3rd of the receivers, I think.
I mean, he is my wide receiver 1. I am happy to see 4 wide receivers going before me, though, because that means I could take Anthony Richardson at the 112 and Justin Herbert at the 201.
I saw that coming, and that's a good pick. And then I think our first probably not accurate pick of the draft so far is CMC there at 202.
Yeah, I would take Bijan ahead of CMC. I mean, I think in our tier video, we had Bijan and Gibbs, and I'm pretty sure Breece Hall as well. And so we had CMC at RB4. He goes RB1.
In this situation, anybody looking to move up for Marv here? Anybody getting aggressive?
I'd start thinking about it. If he doesn't go right here, I'd probably see if I can move up 2 spots. And there he goes, obviously. So I am not able to get Marv. And since I have 2 picks ahead of me, I'm going to go ahead and start looking at the board here. I got Lamar Jackson. Kyler Murray still on the board. He would definitely be the top of my board there.
Kyler Murray is off the board.
The other guys I've been looking at wide receiver would be Puka or Garrett Wilson. For the quarterback position, that was the last of a tier for me. So I probably would be moving towards wide receiver here. And I'm happy that I have Lamar there at quarterback. And I got 10 seconds. And I'm going to be deciding between Puka and Garrett Wilson. He might be taking one of them here, but I got 5 seconds here. And there goes Puka. takes the decision out of my hands. I'm going to stick and take Garrett Wilson here. I actually really, really like Garrett Wilson. I believe I've gone back and forth on having him above Marv just because I think Garrett Wilson, what he's done in the first couple of years was just remarkable. How many targets he was able to earn is just really impressive.
This is a tough spot for me. I think Garrett Wilson would have been a pick for me because I love G-Dub. Kind of between A.J. Brown and Jaden Daniels. Do I want to build a stud lineup with Allen here? Do I want to get my second quarterback of the future before my next pick's not till 311? So the board's going to look a lot different at that point. I think I'm going to go Daniels here and just build out the rest of my roster later.
I've been taking Daniels at 301 in a lot of the mocks that I've been doing, even though I have been going quarterback at the 112, 201, which, by the way, league mates, I will 100% be doing at the 112, 201 because I think that there's 11 quarterbacks that are worth taking in the first round: Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, and everyone that went before them. That being said, with him off the board and this being a 1.5 tight end premium, 1.75 tight end premium, I am deciding between Sam Laporta and Malik Neighbors here. My next pick at the 412, 501 turn. There's a good chance I can still get a decent tight end that I like there. In fact, there's a decent chance I can find my way into getting Mark Andrews there per ADP. For that reason, I'm going to go Malik Neighbors.
I'll just say here, I'm going to be aggressive trying to trade up for A.J. Brown if this is how it's falling. I think he's the last difference maker available, and he's definitely a difference maker. If I can get up from 311 for a fair price to get him and add him to Allen and Daniels, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would also be thinking the same thing here, but I imagine that he's probably going to go at this pick or two, and we can't trade in this mock, unfortunately. And he's going to fall. Okay, well, it goes Trevor Lawrence and A.J. Brown at 303 and 304, and Laporta went at 302.
Grubby Paws with a nice start there. I love that Burrow, love Brown. That's a good start there.
Getting him at the 109, I don't think you're going to see that very frequently, but that's a steal. Love there, I think, is appropriate, and A.J. Brown, I think, is also value. I think that's a great point there. And so since I've got 3 picks before I'm up, we just saw Olave go at the 305. Looking at the quarterback position, there's Dak, Tua, Goff, McCarthy, and May. I think that one of those guys I can probably get back in the 4th round, but I think there's some wide receivers here that I value pretty highly still. I'm going to be looking at Drake London and Brandon Ayuk. And Brock Purdy went off the board after Olave there, so I'm going to have one of these two fall to me since I have only one guy ahead of me. And I would prefer Drake London here, but unfortunately, Drake London.
But you don't get him.
I don't get him. Nope. Well, I will take Brandon Ayuk. He's another player I really, really love. I worry that in San Francisco, his ceiling might be capped a little bit, but we know that offense is great, and he might be on the move here. But I love the talent.
And David, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley going right before you.
Yeah, another pair of running backs right before me. That's pretty nice. Looking at the board, I kind of wish I would have gone Brown here and Dak. Allen, Brown, and Dak would put me pretty much in the driver's seat for competing this year. That being said, I don't hate where I'm at. I was between Roman Dunze and Trey McBride, but I'm going to go McBride with the 175 premium here. And maybe Odunze is still around for me on the way back here at the 402.
Sorry, let me just DM Jay Mamana real quick to take Odunze. He just said contender mode activated in our chat, taking Tua Tagovailoa, and let's see his second pick here.
You got the stack with Tyreek.
Probably going running back as well, I would guess, given his comment of contender mode. I do think pairing Tua with Tyreek, that is a nice value. I think Tyreek at the 212 is a little early for me, but Tua at the 3-4 turn, I do really like that. And then he goes Achane as well for the super Dolphins.
Yikes.
Looks like a best ball build.
So, that's a good offense to buy into, to be honest. But like I said here, I was considering Odunze with my last pick. I do think it's hard to pass Dak Prescott in the 4th round just on value alone. In real life, I might actually consider it and then just trade a quarterback later. But for the purpose of this mock, I think Odunze is probably where I'm going to go. I think I got a nice core to build around. Probably not competing this year, but maybe a fringe competitor.
I was hoping that Dak would slip because I had the 2 wide receivers with Wilson and Brandon Ayuk and Lamar. That would have been a pretty sweet start, I think. And that would have given me flexibility. That probably would have pushed me to be a competitor there with Dak Prescott. But at quarterback here, I got to get one here, in my opinion. It drops off later. But I'm going to take Jared Goff here. He's at the top of the board. There's a couple other quarterbacks that I like. There's a chance that they slip. I just know that if I take Goff here, that he's not going to be a guy that slips back to me. So I still have my eye on quarterback, but I'm going to see how the board falls on the way back around.
Curious, JP, would you rather have Ayuk and Goff or Dak and Waddle or Pittman or Nico?
It would be Dak and Waddle, honestly, because I do think Dak is a clear tier ahead of Goff. I think Goff is pretty underrated though, because I mean he's got that deal. He's locked in to be a starter for a long, long time, and he's paired with Amon-Ra St. Brown for a long time as well as Sam Laporta. So I think that in a 6-point passing touchdown, I actually really think that he belongs here in the fourth round. And I do think Waddle was in consideration there, though, to your point.
I do think Dak definitely does not belong in the fourth round. I think he's a steal in the fourth round. To your point, though, we see Jalen Waddle, Dalton Kincaid, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins all going. I'm hoping at the 4-5 turn to get a tight end, be it Bowers, Pitts, Mark Andrews, given the tight end premium, and a young wide receiver. So I'm liking the way the mock is falling because it seems like they are going to hand me that. Who is all of your favorite pick in this fourth round that we see on the board here?
I think it's Dak, like we've been talking about. Value's great there.
Yeah, I think with these sleeper bots, they kind of aren't taking quarterback as much, just naturally. So yeah, there's been some quarterbacks that slip like Dak. Burrow, I think is a great value. Kyler, I think even at the 206, I think that I would love to have Kyler at 206.
I cannot blame you for that. And I'm going to actually take tight end here because I think it's the best value potentially on the board. I'm going to go with my two young quarterbacks, my young wide receiver. I'm going to go two young tight ends, Brock Bowers and Kyle Pitts at the 4-5 turn. I might actually take Mark Andrews here instead of one of these guys, but I just like the youth and the flexibility that would give me.
I actually was, as you were talking about the tight ends, I thought that Mark Andrews was going to go. And I admit I have a decision here because, like I said, I was looking at the quarterbacks, but I think Mark Andrews in 1.75, I think he belongs right around that same spot you took those tight ends. I think they're all in a tier. I think he's in a tier above Kelsey, but unfortunately he does not fall to me. So I will stick at quarterback. And after you took Pitts, he went Zay Flowers, DJ Moore, Travis Kelsey, DK Metcalf, Mark Andrews, and JJ McCarthy, who was in consideration, but ahead of JJ McCarthy, I have Drake May, who you guys know I love that he fell to me. So now he's my QB3, and I don't even have to rely on him in week one. And you guys know I really like his prospects.
So I just want to point out that 2, 4, 7 of the 10 running backs so far selected have been between teams 3 and 4, who are auto picks. Oh, and one on team 11. I've got a few options here. I'm going to go with someone that I like and I think is going to raise in value. I know his situation's a little murky. His injuries are a little murky, but I love the talent. I love the play. I think he's going to fit in well in that offense as he's shown last year.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick, especially with Roma Dunze and Tank Dell. That means you're probably playing for next year. And I think the situation's even better for Tank Dell next year if Stephon Diggs is probably gone.
Now, I'm a little torn between T. Higgins and George Pickens here. I like them both a lot. I think Higgins has a little more, kind of. I think Pickens maybe has the higher upside. So that's where I'm going to go because I've already kind of established that I'm not all out competing this year. But I think they're both good picks for this year or next year. Hey, 2 more running backs to those 2 auto picks. Thanks for keeping it balanced, guys.
Gee whiz. Yeah, I was hoping we could get a couple more people to get it full, but thankfully we do have some people to help it be more accurate. But
Jay Mamana has 6 players drafted, all Chiefs or Dolphins so far.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I took T. Higgins. You talked about him. I really like him as a wide receiver 3. I think he's still going to be solid this year. And then even next year, if he's going to be on the move, most likely, it looks like. So I think that even if he doesn't go to a landing spot that we're in love with, I think that people with the news cycle, when there's something new and shiny, I think even if I don't love the situation, I could probably still sell him without much, value drop. And maybe it'll really skyrocket if he goes to somewhere like the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Higgins he was my rebuilding team buy in our episode last week. I definitely agree that worst case scenario, he's still worth a first round pick next year because he's still young. He's either on a new team with a big deal or he's on the Bengals with a big deal. But right now, people have him valued so lowly compared to where he was previously. It used to be he was considered in the same tier as Smith and Waddle, but now he's like in an entirely different tier below those guys. I get he's like a little bit older, I think, than those guys, but I'm all in on him at current cost. We see Jonathan Brooks, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Jacob, George Kittle, Jordan Addison, and Brian Thomas Jr. going all before me. Given my build and the young wide receivers available on the board, I'm looking at young and I'm looking at wide receivers based on my build.
You're going to take 2 of my guys here, huh?
Actually I'm taking a guy that I'm entirely out on in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I'm taking a guy that I'm in on but recognize and admit that he's kind of risky in Ladd McConkey.
I'll take all your JSNs. Hit me up.
I'm going to sell you this one.
At 701, I would definitely take Jason as well, right there at the turn. I'd say at the top of the sixth, he's sort of in consideration. When I was T. Higgins at 605, he was at least on my mind, but I still prefer T. Higgins. But JSN, yeah, I don't know. I think he's probably in the same tier as T. Higgins.
I just know he's worth a first to so many people. So for that reason, I'm definitely taking him at the 6-7 turn. Like, no questions, even if I don't believe in him personally. We see a wide receiver run. Deebo Samuel, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice all going off the board. JP, with all these wide receivers going off, are you looking tight end or running back, or what are you thinking now?
Now, I'm not looking at tight end quite yet, but there's somebody took 3 tight ends and you took 2. So I do think that there's probably going to be tight ends flying off the board. So I at least am considering the next tier of tight end. But I might, since I'm a little bit closer to the turn over here, I might just wait on that. But I'm sitting with 3 wide receivers and 3 quarterbacks. There's no quarterbacks that really jump out to me that I'm all that interested in. At tight end, I'd be considering Njoku and Ferguson, maybe Evan Ingram as well, especially if I'm going to go win now. We illustrated in our tight end video just how valuable he was in this format last year. But the wide receivers, it's kind of drying up to a point that I don't love. So honestly, I think I do have to consider tight end and maybe even a running back. And I don't love to take old running backs just with the way that they drop off. So Derrick Henry is pretty scary. Mixon is in consideration, but I think I will take tight end with this format and somebody that you love, Justin, Evan Ingram.
Gosh, this is where I really want to trade down.
How did you know that I love Evan Ingram?
Well, go listen to our tight end episode, the buys and sells. And I think I even talked about Evan Ingram was top 2 tight end in this format in the last weeks 8 through 18. So yeah, he was fantastic.
And David, you went Mike Evans. Explain yourself a little bit there.
The board is ugly as can be for the build that I have, and I'm not allowed to trade. I think he will give me the best return during point scoring season of anyone available. Diggs might be better, but he has a lot of volatility, and I already have Tank Dell. Not exactly trying to build a stack there with an old guy, especially without Stroud. So Evans just seemed like the safest pick there more than anything.
Did you have any consideration for Trey Benson there, or are you going to take him here, or are you not so interested in him at this price tag?
I'm probably staying out on that right now. Man, this is just such an ugly board here, though. How much time? 11
Yeah,
seconds.
it feels like we're near the top of a tier, which you never like to be near the top of a tier.
I'm gonna hate myself, I think, and I'm gonna go here. Yeah, grab a QB when in doubt. I didn't feel like Cousins, and I don't like taking Deshaun Watson when I can avoid it. So.
And JP, you're in a similar tough situation. Can I interest you in Trey Benson here?
I'm actually between him and Jake Ferguson. I think my team is kind of leaning a little bit more win now, and I think there's a massive teardrop at tight end after Jake Ferguson. So I'm just going to stick with the 2 tight ends because in this format, flexing a tight end, not only is it viable, but it's actually pretty strong. So I'm going to be like you and have 2 tight ends that are just a little bit older than yours.
I got them babies.
Maybe a lot bit older. Your guys are like 21, 22.
I think Kyle Pitts is still young enough to be in college. Now, I would love to see Trey Benson drop to me, but otherwise, I definitely have my eyes on Bo Nix, who just went off the clock board. I'd consider Will Levis.
Nice.
I am eyeballing Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper on the turn if they're both available to secure that value. I also typically don't like to draft him. I'm happy to see him go at the 808. I do think that there is a benefit to securing a QB3, but I think Will Levis is the last one I would consider taking this early.
There goes another one, Kirk Cousins.
And I will definitely be taking Will Levis first here at the 812. I'm going to stall a little bit. I'm also considering wide receiver. Like I said, Amari Cooper is definitely piquing my interest. I do see, scrolling down a little bit farther in my starred players, Christian Kirk also available. And I do think that interests me a little bit more. So I will first take Will Levis. And then I'm deciding between a Christian Kirk, a Xavier Legette, and a Amari Cooper. So I have to look at my roster and decide, am I capable of competing with this team? And the answer is probably honestly no. And for that reason, if I have to pick, I probably will take Xavier Legette just because he's the guy most likely to be able to be worth a first-round pick in the future. I don't believe in Ricky Pearsall. I know you do, JP.
Yeah, and Ricky Pearsall, he would be somebody that I would consider in this round. But my team is definitely looking like it will be able to compete this year. And the only hole I really have is at running back. With Garrett Wilson, Ayuk, and Higgins, I'm pretty happy at wide receiver. If I see one here that I like Christian Kirk, he's definitely somebody I might be considering here if he does fall to me. But running back, I might have to start looking at guys like David Montgomery, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, guys in that range. But with the way the board is, I might be able to wait on one if Kirk does fall, but he does not fall. So I think I will probably be looking at Najee Harris, David Montgomery right here. Because Ferguson also, if he's my first flex play, I think he could be a guy who puts up top 20 wide receiver numbers in this format. And Ricky Pearsall goes right before me. Normally, I'd probably be a little upset.
No temptations then.
No temptations, yeah. Najee Harris is who I'll go with here. David Montgomery was in consideration as well, but I think as an RB1, I probably prefer a little more consistency with Najee Harris. What are you thinking about here, David?
Still thinking about how I can't trade. I probably need a running back if I'm going to have a chance to compete, and I kind of have a few pieces that could take me that direction. I think this pick could absolutely blow up, but if it hits, it could also gain a ton of value. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is looking for pieces that I can sell mid-season if I need to pivot, which I'm kind of expecting to. But just because my last 3 picks actually kind of have a chance to compete. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. Taking an upside swing. I mean, if he does take over that RB1 job, we talked about him in the RB buy sells, that Sean Payton, his running back rooms always score a ton of points, and they always catch a lot of passes as well. I think Bo Nix, he's the right kind of quarterback that you want for your fantasy running back. He likes to check it down.
Bubble screen Bo?
Bubble screen Bo, that's right. That's what they called him in the Senior Bowl.
And David, are you considering another running back here or looking to go back to the wide receiver or pick your first tight end? I don't think there's anyone at tight end.
I have McBride.
Interests you.
I have McBride.
Oh, you have McBride.
I'm going to do another pick here that I think has a value insulation in the sense that people love him. They love his name, and guys like that, I think, can survive a couple of bad weeks before their value truly dips.
Yeah, Warren would have been in consideration, even though I did have Najee Harris. But consider the fact that my first flex is a tight end, I think I am going to take my wide receiver 4 here, and I love the value of Deontay Johnson in the 10th round.
I was thinking about him.
I posted on our X about just how good he's been at earning targets, and he's always one of those best target earning wide receivers in the league. I mean, you see with reception perception, he's got the full green route tree. He's just one of the great route runners in the league, and I think he's going to be the clear number 1 target for Bryce Young, and I think he's going to love him.
Yeah, I love that pick. I love him. Like I said, I'm not looking to compete probably with this build based off what I have. I went very young. Otherwise, I probably would take him over Xavier Legette even potentially. But normally I'd be looking to do some trading instead of all of this. Given the fact that we are doing a mock and I do have to start taking some value, I probably will be looking to select a running back coming up here. I would love to see Tajay Spears drop to me here. If he does not. We see Blake Corum, Zamir White, Tajay Spears, Michael Penix all going after you. And now the running backs that are available are Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, and Nick Chubb. Nothing that really makes any sense. I have to admit, this is a really disgusting range of the draft, and one that either I need to be competing or trading away from early, trying to turn my 10th round, 11th round picks into earlier picks by moving back earlier in the draft. Since I haven't done that and I have to stick and pick here, I do think I actually am considering like something entirely out of character. Justin Fields' name sticks out as someone that could go to value, but I will take Brian Robinson as a guy that I think at this point is young enough and has 2 more years that he should be under contract unless I'm wrong. And I guess I will just take a Tony Pollard and just see if my 2 QBs that I think are going to be elite for fantasy, my 2 tight ends, and my young wide receivers could drag me into the playoffs. I guess that's the build I'd have to go with.
You can always trade those guys later, too.
I will. Don't worry. Even though it's a mock draft, I'm going to create a league and just send out trade offers so I don't feel gross later.
Well, crap. I was hoping for Zach Moss or Tony Pollard to come back around, and none of them are, unfortunately. So I do need to address my RB2 position, though, if I am competing here. James Conner is in consideration. I'm a little worried that Trey Benson might take over the second half of the year, but it's not something I have to worry about now because he's off the board. Austin Eckler, I don't know if I really want to rely on him. Honestly, it is a really, really gross range. And I think I might just have to take a few shots here at running back because I feel pretty good at quarterback, tight end, and wide receiver. I got 4 that I really like. But I think I don't really trust Nick Chubb. I don't think he's going to be ready till late in the year, and he's getting pretty old. Austin Eckler, he's a lot older now too, and sharing the backfield with Brian Robinson. if I'm going to have somebody that I can count on, I think it's probably going to be Devin Singletary. I think he's somewhat underrated running back. I mean, we saw he was pretty solid for Houston last year, and the Giants, he's the clear guy. Like, there's nobody else that we really have seen anything from outside of Singletary. So I think he's probably my best bet for RB2 in this range.
Do not love this board again. Kind of a theme here.
In 5 rounds, David.
I know, but I like moving around, you know? I'm going to take a guy who a lot of people in the community like. I'm not as high on, but I love when the community likes a player because it normally means he's got a little bit of a value floor.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he's really talented as well. I think he's a great route runner. And he's actually, surprisingly, I've seen a lot of statistics that show, even in contested catches at his size, that he was actually pretty strong at the catch point. So I just worry that he's just, if AD Mitchell is better than him, then is he the third target for a running quarterback? But outside of that, I love the talent of him, so I can't blame you with this part of the draft.
Yeah, understand that as well. Walk us through your thought process here at your next pick, David.
I do think Justin Fields is worth considering. If I'm going to compete, it's hard to have a dead asset like that, and he probably is for at least a while this season. I'm going to go ahead and take a flyer on the other guy I was thinking about with Downs. I'm just going to take Troy Franklin. If he does hit, he could be the receiver 1 there, even though the receiver 1 there is probably still on the board, and I was thinking about Sutton as well. I see my team more as a next year competitor than this year, just with moves to make. So
I'm going to take another shot at running back here, and the guy that I'm going to go with is Marshawn Lloyd, because like I mentioned with Devin Singletary, he's not, out of the guys I was picking between, he was probably my best shot at production, but I don't feel super confident in it. So Marshawn Lloyd, he could be a guy that if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, Marshawn Lloyd could be a guy who's a top 15, top 20 running back the second half of the year, and he might even be the starter next year. I outlined him in one of our recent videos, actually, but yeah, as my RB3, he gives me a little bit of upside to really help cover, any of the weaker production at running back that I have.
And this is the point of the draft where I'm really hoping to get a Raheem Mostert in the 12-13 turn. We've seen Jahan Dotson, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, Roman Wilson, Freiermuth, Carr, Fields, Miller, Brown, all going off the board here. At this point, I do love the value of Raheem Mostert in like the 13th round of a startup, just as a guy that can buoy you potentially. Like, we don't know what he's going to do. He could suck. That is definitely a range of outcomes. I'm going to go Mostert and Hopkins at the 12-13 turn because I can squint and see myself being competitive, or at the very least, I know Hopkins is a sellable asset. And I could pray for Mostert.
If this was real, I think you and I would be talking after this, Justin, to push one of our teams in one direction and the other in the other direction.
100%. David and I could only trade when that's what we have to do. We have to decide to go different directions, otherwise we're at a standoff. But we are very willing to do that out of a startup to make those trades. That's a really good strategy in a startup, is find somebody else in the middle if you end up in the middle and be willing to go whichever way. Doesn't necessarily have to be you want to compete or you want to throw it in, but just do whatever you can kind of find. And you just went Kamani Vidal, JP. I like that pick.
Yeah, like I said, I feel good about my other positions outside of RB. And if he's another guy outside of Najee Harris and Singletary, if I have Lloyd and Vidal, if one of them hits, then I think that it really gives me a big increase in my chances to win the championship.
I'm going to go ahead and take someone I was actually considering with my last pick. I think he is the clear receiver 1 there. It's just production, baby. I know we don't love him, but you know what? If he starts proving he's the receiver 1 there, it looks like he could be a solid receiver, wide receiver 2 on the season. That's definitely someone I can sell if I'm not using him to compete.
And the 13th round ends with Daniel Jones going off the board. In the 14th round here, there's nothing sexy on the board. There's nothing that's that sure anymore, but there are definitely some running backs that I think are worthwhile rostering. And there's a lot of wide receivers that I'm trying to sell for any third in a lot of different drafts that I have. Are you thinking at this point, are we at the point where you're just taking guys that you believe in, David, or are you still trying to take players to try to compete, et cetera, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back and forth. Obviously, when you can't trade, you kind of are boxed into your draft slot. I'm mostly looking for value at this point, whether it's because I think they can help me compete or because I think they have a chance of being a sellable asset. And that's kind of the motivation behind this pick. If this guy ends up being the running back 1 there, I'll be able to sell him. He's actually at the top of the board, so it should work anyways that I timed out. I was going to take Gus Bus. If he's the guy there, he's either going to help me in my very weak running back room or I'll be able to sell him. So not the best spot on the board. I was thinking about Burton there, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's where JP goes.
Not something I was thinking about until he fell to me.
Yeah, and so in this round, like I said, we see Jacoby Myers, Gabe Davis, Quentin Johnson, Khalil Shakir, Rashid Shaheed, and Malachi Corley all going, as well as Burton. A lot of wide receivers that are not the types of guys I usually want to roster. There is one guy that I will roster. I will take a wide receiver, and that will be Tyler Lockett for a similar reason to what you said of that you have T. Higgins, I have Jackson Smith and Jigba. So if JSN gets injured, Lockett is somebody I feel much more comfortable flexing. And then I do think at this point, I'm either going to go with a young wide receiver, hoping I can sell them, but I already have probably as many wide receivers as I want to have. So given that, I'm deciding between Zeke and I don't know who else at running back. So I will take Zeke and hope that he gives me some PPR. We are going to stop after the 15th round here. So JP and David, finish your competing rosters with the next pick.
Well, there's been a lot of players go that I liked. I had my eye on Curtis Samuel, Damari Douglas, and Javon Baker. I at least was considering them since I only have 5 wide receivers, and I like to have at least one more if I'm competing. But then I'll probably turn my attention to a running back here. Here I'm just looking for guys with upside. And the only guys that I really think have upside are the guys who are handcuffs or guys who I think that might be splitting a backfield. And the guy that I'm going to be taking here is, okay, I didn't take him. It's Ty Chandler. I think he's a little bit too low on the board. But, I mean, so with Aaron Jones there, he's getting towards that range where he's might be hitting the age cliff sometime soon. So even if Aaron Jones doesn't get injured, I think there's still a chance that Ty Chandler does see a large percentage of this backfield and maybe even takes over.
I'm going to take another handcuff, and I kind of thought you might be taking him, so I'm glad you didn't. Did not test well, otherwise he'd probably be going a lot higher. He was my RB3 before the combine. I love me some Bucky Irving, and I don't think Rachaad White is as good as his numbers were.
Well, I guess we got the last pick in the draft here. Goes to Jay Mamana.
And he takes Mike Williams.
Big Mike.
And we will pause there. We are going to transition and just kind of talk about what we think is our favorite pick in each round. Or conversely, if you don't want to, give me a least favorite pick in that round as far as the value goes. Round 1, I'm going to give myself a shout out getting Anthony Richardson at the 112. If he drops that late, he is the type of player that I would be trying to trade up at the 110, 11, 12 if I could. I'm not looking to give up a future first, but I do think in the back end of the first round, the 10, 11, 12, if you can get 110, 111, 112 prices on it, I like that. David, who's your favorite or least favorite value in the round?
I think Richardson's a great pick. Just so I'm not copying you, I'm going to take Burrow. I think at the 109 there, that's a great pick. I don't like using least favorite here because I love Amon-Ra, but at the 110, I think that's a little too rich for my blood. I would have gone quarterbacks above him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys, and I don't want to hammer the point, so I'll move to round 2. I think that I highlighted earlier, I think Kyler Murray was probably the best value. Tyreek was just a little bit higher than what I would have expected.
Yeah, I think Kyler's standing out to me as well, but I do love the value on Marv and Garrett Wilson personally. And then my least favorite pick was an auto pick, so I don't have to say McCaffrey, but
I wanted to take Love over Herbert almost, so I really love his value at 204. Like just the quarterbacks that go in that round of Murray and Love. I'm trying to trade up to 201, 202, 203 if they're on the board, and people are giving me second round startup pick prices for them because I think they're first round startup pick values. So I really love those guys. Third round, not going to pat myself on the back here. I am going to say that my favorite pick, I have to be honest, I love the value on A.J. Brown. I know that's one that you were talking about, David, so I might be stealing your guy here. I do think my least favorite pick, definitely Saquon Barkley in the third round.
Yeah, I think A.J. Brown is my favorite, but I'll go ahead and pat myself on the back here. I think McBride basically around after Laporta is also great value.
Yeah, I like that one in the tight end premium. I think that's probably about as late as he should go at the 3-4 turn. I don't think he'll get further than that. And moving on to the fourth round, I think we mentioned it before, but Dak Prescott, I think great value there. Is there anybody else who stands out outside of Dak for you guys?
Then Dak would have been my pick as well. Nico's pretty good value, but they're all kind of the same in that range. So
I mean, I just think the number of running backs we've seen really pushed down the wide receivers, Waddle, Smith, and Nico. I do all like kind of a little bit more than the wide receivers that follow in Pittman, Flowers, and Moore. I do think they have a little bit more upside from a combination of youth, being in good offenses, etc. just some perceived issues with their target competition. I do think they all have low end wide receiver one upside. So I do really like those picks in the 4th round in general. But I do also understand that they probably will perform pretty similar to the wide receivers that go immediately after them. So it's probably a bad process. Start with round 5. I'll say I really love Mark Andrews, and I really don't like Rashad White because there's a 0% chance you can get a 1st round pick for him. And there's guys afterwards that are worth a 1st round pick.
I think May was my favorite value in the 5th, and probably Pacheco as my least favorite.
Yeah, I was definitely between May and Andrews if Andrews did fall, but I don't think May is going to fall to the middle to the end of the 5th round in most drafts. So yeah, I loved that pick.
6th round, I do really love George Pickens. I'll pat you on the back, David. He's a guy that I'm pretty interested in. I hate DeAndre Swift here. Obviously, that's an auto pick. So I'm just going to hate on all the auto pick running backs probably. Don't draft running backs in the 6th round, guys. There's wide receivers.
Yeah, I also like Higgins there. I think JP and I both did pretty well. I would have maybe picked your guy, but you picked him out of order there, Justin. So that'll maybe foreshadow my favorite 7th round pick a little. And I don't love Kittle here. I know it's tight end premium and all, and I get why he went. I do understand it. I might even do it if I was in his position. I just would prefer a lot of these young upside receivers first, personally.
Yeah, the tight ends in this range, I just think that if you trade up 1 round, I think it's just such better group of players with Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, maybe even Kelsey if you're competing. So yeah, I don't necessarily love it, but I understand it with the tight end premium. But I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. It was an auto pick, but I think that he's probably my 109 in rookie draft still. And for him to be at the end of the 6th, alongside Ladd, I think Ladd's a good pick as well.
And in the 7th round, I will say my favorite pick, probably value upside wise, Bryce Young, just because how different is he from JJ McCarthy? I mean, obviously JJ McCarthy has no like black marks on his NFL record, but
he also has Justin Jefferson
Bryce coming out. Deontay Johnson.
Yeah. Okay.
No, obviously, but the 2-round difference, I think it's a really good upside play. So I would happily smash him in the middle of the 7th round. My least favorite pick, I don't know, any of the old wide receivers not named Deebo Samuel. They're good values. I don't like the 7th round. I'm trying to get out of the 7th round.
Yeah, it was an ugly round for sure. My favorite pick was right at the top. I think JSN's most likely going to be gone by the end of the 6th round in most startups. I love him personally. I agree with the old guys as bad picks, but I'll just highlight a different one. It's not even a bad pick because I don't think the value's there. I just don't believe in Keon Coleman, and I think that might even be JP's least favorite pick there too. I was thinking about him, but man, with all these proven veteran producers, I just felt a lot safer taking a guy like Mike Evans.
Yeah, and I would probably say Devontae Adams. I'm a little worried about him this year, and if he doesn't really come through in a big way this year, then his value is going to be very low. But I really like Rashee Rice. I think what he did last year was really, really good. I think just Andy Reid, he puts him in such a great role, and I think he's going to continue to be great in that role. And I think the suspension is really giving an opportunity to get a solid value on him. The potential suspension.
And I think we'll just do through the 9th round. The 8th round, my least favorite pick, probably David Njoku, because I like Jake Ferguson quite a bit better than him, and I don't really believe in him post Joe Flacco. I talked about that a little bit in some of our tight end episodes we did. My favorite pick is either of the young quarterbacks, but I'll give myself the pat on the back. Will Levis in the 8th round. I think he definitely could bust out, but I do like him as an upside play in the 8th round. That's a price I'm willing to pay.
Yeah, I think he was probably my favorite, maybe just because he was at the end of the round, and that makes him the most, the least invested in player in the round. It is an ugly round, though. I don't love really any of these picks. I didn't love the spot when I was on the board either.
I think Schultz is clearly behind Njoku and Ferguson. To go in the same round, I think that is much too early. And I think Benson, I love the upside. I think he's one of the guys that has some of the most upside. Maybe some of the quarterbacks even get argument for, but I was considering Benson and probably would have gone that way if it wasn't for Ferguson falling, who I thought was also a great value. And if I was rebuilding, I definitely would have leaned Benson for sure.
And I do like that Benson pick as well. I really do love Cooper and Kirk here in the 9th round. Those are two of my favorite values. I probably would be willing to take them at the 8-9 turn if I was competing 100%. So those are guys that I'm very interested in getting at that turn.
I felt sniped when Christian Watson went. I was targeting him. I think if you're competing, he's not a good pick. But if you're on the fence or going for productive struggle, and if he stays healthy, when he's on the field, he really does seem to be the preferred target in Green Bay, even with Jaden Reed out. It didn't seem like it mattered who else was healthy when he was available. He was the guy both in the red zone and going down the field. So I think the upside is just huge there. there for Watson.
Yeah, I think Christian Kirk is definitely the guy. I think if everybody in this round be looking to invest in redraft outside of those two, probably not anybody else. Christian Kirk is younger, so I think he's the best pick.
All right. And then the rest of the draft, I'm just going to name a few guys that really stand out to me as guys that I like at cost. Deontay Johnson, JP, I wanted him. Shouldn't have taken him. That was rude. I really like Troy Franklin at the 11-12 turn there. Not because I necessarily believe in him. I'm kind of indifferent. But at that price, like a guy that could be the wide receiver one, who is the only player with any chemistry with that quarterback already, tall, lanky, speedy guy, who we were all really excited about before the combine. Last name that I think that I really am pretty interested in at cost as well probably would be Jerome Ford in the 14th round if he's going that late. Kind of along the same lines of a Gus Edwards, except we just saw Jerome Ford do pretty good things in the offense that he's in already. And if Chubb has the type of issues with the knee that it's probably actually logical to assume that he does, we could see a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 potentially in Ford. So I really like that pick as well. And who are some guys that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think Curtis Samuel is the one that I like the most because I think he's the wide receiver one on the Buffalo Bills. Keon Coleman, like David mentioned, I'm a little bit concerned about if he's actually going to hit. Khalil Shakir, there's a lot of stats that show that he didn't really play unless it was 3 wide receiver sets. So wide receiver 2 sets, I think Curtis Samuel is the one that's on the field probably with maybe Keon Coleman. So I think that he could be a guy that surprises this year, maybe has a top 25 season, and he's still not that old. The other guy I just wanted to shout out was Raheem Mostert that you took, Justin. I thought that was a great pick. I was considering him over Lloyd, but I just wanted the younger upside there at that point.
I want to give you a little bit of pushback on that, reading too much into that idea about Shakir was not out there in 3 wide receiver sets, or 2 wide receiver sets, sorry, because Stephon Diggs was there. And if you take Stephon Diggs off the field, he's going to throw a bigger fit than my just turning 2-year-old nephew does over literally anything and everything. And Gabe Davis, phenomenal football player, like amazing blocker, right? Like he's like a really good NFL football player, really good blocker. He's also a guy that can do a lot of stuff on the field as far as like his route running and deep threat to, actually threaten the defense. So those guys are always going to be out there. Both of those guys are gone. So you can read some into that. Like, I don't know, that whole situation is so murky that I don't want any of it, but I don't mind a 15th round cost on it. But I don't think we can necessarily assume anything based off of that, if that makes sense, just because the 2 guys that were there, there's a reason that they didn't come off the field and they're both entirely gone. So like that specific stat, I don't necessarily read into, if that makes sense.
Pretty drastic though. It's like extremely low is what got me concerned. And part of your argument was Gabe Davis, and that makes me, it makes me think that Shakir maybe won't still play in 2 wide receiver sets. I just don't know why they didn't use him at least a little bit more, because Gabe Davis isn't a guy that, they even want to keep around, but I still see what you're trying to say there.
Really good football player, not good fantasy player, Gabe Davis.
I'd argue that. I think it's arguable. I don't know if he's definitely a good football player.
He's better than you.
Yeah, I'm not a good football player. So
I'm going to say one guy individually and then a couple groups of players that I think were pretty good. I like Sanat where he went, going behind Kmet even. I think that was great value. And I like these rookie running backs in the double-digit rounds, Lloyd, Wright, Vidal, Davis, Irving, even. Like pretty much all of them have a good shot at gaining value. And I do like the shots they took at Packers skill position players. Stubbs, Wicks, Musgrave all went, and I think they all went in the same round, didn't they? Yeah, the 13th. That's a good offense. It's a good young quarterback, and a lot of upside to be had in that room if you can get it right. So I like taking those shots there.
All right. Yeah, definitely informative. I already have league mates in my DMs because we posted the mock draft link in the league, and they're always like, "Oh, I mean, like, you willing to move? I like your team. Are you willing to move off some of those picks? Like, how valuable are those guys to you?" Getting some nice lowball offers. It's always fun doing a mock draft, but the reality is we're going to be making a lot of trades before any draft. What is your number one thing that you like to take away from a mock draft, JP?
I kind of like to see, once the mock draft is done, where I set my tier, like where the end and start of tiers are. And that way, I mean, that can be a little bit subjective, but that means when I go into my startup draft, I kind of know where I want to position myself. Like David mentioned that one point in the draft where he said, I think you highlighted it, Justin, that he was at the top of a tier. I'd probably try to get ahead of that and trade up before that pick comes up, or I'd try to trade back. But I think definitely that's what I like to see the most, is where those tiers are at quarterback and at wide receiver and tight end.
Yeah, for me, I like to see where the picks start to get ugly, where I start to feel really uncomfortable with the entire board. For me, that was my pick at the back of the 7th, but really not the entire, most of the 7th round. Let's put it that way, which honestly is a little bit later than I might have predicted. So maybe I like my 6th round pick a little bit more than normal. Yeah, if I can move in that 7th through 10th round range, if I can move back there, or if I decide I'm competing, I can try to move from the 4th through 6th round back into that range and add extra draft capital or something, but still know that I'm going to have producers available to me.
Yeah, and for me, I think my biggest takeaway, pretty similar to what JP said, but I guess my second biggest takeaway as I've been really diving into the startup is if there's a 3rd round reversal, this is just the way I build a team generally. I think the 112 or the 111, depending on how saucy you want to get, is probably my preferred draft spot because I think that the value of getting 2 elite quarterbacks that I think you can do there is so much more valuable than getting a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and doing whatever you can, trading around, trying to get your second elite quarterback somewhere because I truly think you can get 2 elite quarterbacks in those 2 draft spots.
So let me ask you this then. Would you trade Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels straight up for Anthony Richardson and Justin Herbert? Because that's what you're saying.
I think if you also tell me that I get a 3rd cornerstone asset, because I think that the line for cornerstone assets is around the 301, 302, 303 range.
I think McBride falls in. I got a little lucky with McBride falling, don't get me wrong, but I think he fits in that category.
But then when I look in the middle of the round at Olave, London, Ayuk, Purdy, Lawrence, Taylor, Barkley, I think we're kind of out of that, what I'd consider a cornerstone asset range. So yeah, I think you do get lucky there with McBride falling, but I usually expect him to go around the 304, 5, 6, something like that. The fact that I also feel like I'm getting a 3rd cornerstone asset at the 301, 302 is probably a part in there as well. But in a vacuum, yeah, I think I would even probably just take any 2 of these quarterbacks. If I could tier up off of Jaden Daniels for a quarterback that I've seen do it because of about 50% bust rate for a rookie quarterback, if I had to make that as like my first 2 picks, I would straight up take Anthony Richardson, Herbert. I would probably take Jordan Love and Murray over Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels. I'm just not that high on Jaden Daniels compared to quarterbacks that I've seen do it in the NFL, although I am smash your start. I think it is great.
I think you're undervaluing Josh Allen. He's been the quarterback one in 4 of the last 5 years. He can literally break fantasy. I mean, Richardson could, but he's been hurt in half the games he's played and is only... You talk about guys that we haven't seen do it. A handful more snaps from Richardson than you have from Jaden Daniels.
I have to be honest. I will take Anthony Richardson if he falls to me, but I'm hoping that JP takes him before me because I don't really want... I don't believe in him personally, but I have to take him at the 112 if he's there. I would probably feel better about my team having Justin Herbert and Jordan Love than having Anthony Richardson, but just because of the nature of the game that we play of fantasy football, I have to take Anthony Richardson over Jordan Love, and then I can trade from there if I want to.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what the Caleb decision, to see where the Caleb Williams versus Anthony Richardson decision falls in our startup, because I think I've seen it go all over the place. I've seen people's ranks on X and on Keep Trade Cut. They've kind of bounced back and forth. But do you guys have a strong lean between those 2? Because you guys know that I like Richardson a little bit better.
I would take Richardson over Williams.
In a startup, I would take Richardson over Williams. Like in an existing league, there's just a question of team build. Do I want the insulation? Then I think you're going to get more value insulation from Caleb Williams. I think he could fail this year. People wouldn't panic. But if Richardson fails this year or gets injured again this year, people panic. So, but in a startup, I would take Richardson because I think he's just the better game breaker for fantasy.
Yeah, it's just so unusual for Caleb Williams to have that situation. That's what makes me kind of think about it just a little bit, because I think Odunze is fantastic as well as DJ Moore and even Keenan Allen for this year. It's hard to see Caleb Williams really fail,
Too bad you were too much of a coward to draft off of the spot that you're going to have in the actual draft on Monday.
To be fair, a big part of it was because I know I'm not going to stay in the spots. Just like how I move all the time, and I think you guys are going to do the same thing as well.
All right. I think we've talked this one about to the death. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope this was as useful for you as it was for us. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.